right, everybody, welcome to Omnic Lab. We're back with another episode. This week is episode 168 of the lab. And for those of you who may be new to the stream and new to the show this week, we've got a podcast that focuses on the strategies inside of the game of Overwatch, kind of in a scientific method style where we learn trial and error as hosts because we are also players like you guys. And we want to learn how to play better just as much as we know you guys do. So we're up here trying to get guests and talk about the things that we've been learning ourselves. And this week we brought in an expert in the realm of coaching. We have the one and only IoStux from
Hello.
XL2 and many other positions of authority, I guess you could say. But welcome to the show, IO.
Hey, it's very great to be here. I'm a little rusty. I haven't been on a podcast in a while because I've been so busy, but I'll manage.
Well, I
No
guess we're
worries.
done with the show, so we'll see you guys next week. All right, my name's Rob, and joining me as always is my man Andres out in Georgia. What's up, Andres?
Hey, how's it going? Pretty excited to be here today. We have a pretty cool show, especially since we've been doing all the coaching lately. I know a lot of you guys have been interested in that. Today, we have brought a proper coach, somebody who's been coaching for the T2 and T3 scenes for a while now, somebody with an awesome YouTube channel that focuses on just that, teaching the game of Overwatch in depth. So, looking forward to our talk today.
So before we really get started in like some announcements and stuff, Io, for those people that are out there that maybe don't know you, just on the rare chance that they haven't heard of you before, please tell us a little bit about you and your background as a player and how you transitioned into coaching, and then kind of all about your coaching, and then bring us up to speed on what you're doing now.
Okay. I used to be addicted to WoW, and I still am, but I learned how to repress those feelings. Then Overwatch came out, and I became slightly addicted to that, and I got pretty good at it. I managed to reach Masters when Masters was worth something. And then once all of the ranks got kind of inflated, I eventually made my way to GM, and then I got GM on a couple of more accounts. And then I had a bet with a friend. It's a long story, so I'm not going to go into it. On who could get more YouTube subscribers, and I won. So I figured, hey, I already got this going, might as well continue doing it. And then people wanted coaching, and then I gave them coaching. And then too many people wanted coaching, so I had to charge for the coaching. And then I quit college because I made enough money from the coaching to where quitting college was only borderline stupid, not entirely stupid. And I've kind of just been following the fake it till you make it train since then. And yeah, I'd say I've gotten pretty good at it now.
Nice. Very cool. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about your YouTube channel and what you do over there because it's a lot of really cool content.
Mm-hmm. So my YouTube channel is a little unique, I guess, because the general target audience of most YouTube channels is they're kind of people pleaser channels where they just try to tell people what they want to hear, which is fair. I mean, they need to make a living. They're smart. They know what they need to do that. But the great thing about what I do is that because I got into coaching professionally this early on, I never really relied on my YouTube channel for anything. So it was pretty much just kind of my playground where I could do whatever I wanted and make the content that I like making. Which is why I make videos that are close to 2 hours long because I know that barely anyone is going to watch them, but I like making them. So I think that's what kind of sets my channel apart because I just make content that I like making. And I'm having a blast, and not a lot of people want to watch that kind of content because it can be a little dry, or maybe it's a little too try hard for them and they just want to focus on having fun, and that's completely fine. But for the few that really are looking for it, I'm the one that can give them that sort of content, and I'm very happy with what I do.
Absolutely. I think that if you're looking for very detailed, very in depth kind of coaching where every topic you'll really dissect to its core roots, right? Whether it be movement or aim or even some mentality, right? Some of your videos actually focus a lot on like the attitude that you should have as a player or some of your blog posts as well. But you really get into the detail of things, into like why that is important and why you should pay attention to these things. And I can tell, yeah, if you're a person who's not really dedicated into learning and into that subject, it might be a little dry for you. But in general, if the knowledge it is that you're looking for, there's a lot in your channel, which I really appreciate.
I think the words I would use would be like deconstructing kind of piece by piece is kind of how you're breaking things. It's not really just a breakdown of certain things, if that makes sense. It's very organized, structured separation of distinct things, and then showing the players and I guess anyone at that point kind of how the pieces meld together when they do overlap. And then the other one would just be just like thorough because you don't get to 2 hours without being thorough, to be honest. So
Now,
tell us a little bit about one of your current projects. I know that recently you just finished up your submissions and accepting of the Elo Hell Dante event. So why don't you
Mm-hmm.
tell us a little bit about this and kind of where you're at with it right now?
All right, so I guess a little bit of history where this entire thing even came from, because it kind of came out of nowhere.
Okay.
So after I parted ways with Uprising Academy, I created IoStux Academy, and the whole idea was I don't have any money to give you, but I can give you everything else that an academy team can give you. So why not do that? So I started IoStux Academy, which essentially was a tier 3 project that really just focused on supporting players as best as they could, and not beating around the bush or focusing on inviting all of my friends to it and having a grand old time, but actually getting to work and getting stuff done. So I've been doing that, and we weren't super public. A lot of people outside of the scene didn't even know that it existed. But the mantra that I follow with my work right now is that I just want to let my work speak for itself. So if it's good, then the right people are going to hear about it, which is what happened. Jane and I, we've been yeah, again, it's a super long history, so I'm going to skip a lot of parts here.
Yeah, that's fine.
But we've known each other for a while, and one day he just messaged me and he told me about this idea that he had. And obviously, the idea is super big, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on what ideas he has come up with. But we eventually decided that we wanted to work together, and that's how Project Inferno and its first team, Elo Hell Dante, came to be. It's essentially very similar to IoStux Academy, so we still want to give the players the same support, and it is a genuine organization. So this isn't a tier 3 team that's going to disband after one season. We're the exact opposite of that. What we want is to build a brand, build up a reputation, build a very, very strong staff to make sure that if what we want is that when a tier 3 player just sits down and kind of thinks about his career, and he asks himself, what is the best thing I can do to progress my career, we want Project Inferno to be the answer to that question, where this is the the Harvard of tier 3 teams, where yes, getting into this project is going to be very difficult, but if you do make it into the project and you really work your butt off, you're going to sow the rewards. And that's essentially the entire idea behind it, to really just pick up those who really deserve it, those who don't just want to be pro players, but who are willing to actually work to becoming genuine professional players, and then giving them all the tools that they need.
very cool. For somebody that might be interested, and I know that at this point the applications are closed, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
for somebody who might be interested in joining maybe a project like this later on the line, what are some of the aptitudes you guys are looking for in the people that you're selecting?
Right. So without touting my own horn too much, but I spent like 8 hours one day just learning how Google Sheets worked, and I made this amazing. I wish I could show you. It's great. I made this Google Sheet with a bunch of information, and it looked so hot. Honestly, I'm gonna print it and put it on a wall. But
Frame that
what
shit.
we did is we split the applications. So we had all of the applications, and we just had different stages. So we had the first filter and then the second filter, and we just kept filtering people. So first filter that we had was a just raw skill and experience filter, right? So that's skill rating, what teams they have been on, etc. I won't go into too much detail on what criteria we use there, but we just, as harsh as it sounds, if you're gold, you're not going to make it onto the team, because quite frankly, you don't need us if you're in gold. So we made sure that we filtered out all of those that just don't need us, who can just improve on their own, right? Then the second filter that we had was we asked multiple questions to the applicants, why they believe they're not in contenders, why they believe they're not in Overwatch League, and then we gave them opportunity to kind of sell them to us. And everyone on the Project Inferno staff, we all just sat together, went through every single application, and we read through those answers. And the things we were looking for was the player making any excuses? Were they trying to just kiss ass? Like, did they come up with super cheesy answers where we just know that they just wrote down what they think we want to hear? But we're all very experienced, we know what we're doing, so we can tell when someone is genuine and when they're just trying to earn a spot. So that was kind of the secondary filter, where we looked at their answers and we tried to look for people that really align with our ideals. The next filter was one which I wish a lot more tier 3 teams would do, and that's just a general background check. So we made sure that obviously the teams that they said they were on, that information was accurate. We made social media checks because, and I'm going to be somewhat transparent here because I think it's reasonable. We looked for any racist statements, transphobic statements, just general
hate speech in general.
hate speech. Yeah, so things that you don't want to hear from a professional player, right? Just
Self-control check, more or less.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things even we looked for was were they very active politically on their professional accounts? And it's not really about opinions or anything. Like, we didn't look at it and then we went like, oh, he tweeted something I didn't like. We just looked for things that we felt were inappropriate for a professional brand account, because that's essentially what all of these Twitter accounts and Twitch accounts are. These aren't just their personal accounts that they're going to use to chat with their grandma. These are accounts that represent them as players, and if we want to pick them up, they're going to represent the organization. So we went through everything, and some people were like, I'm sorry, but there were some incredibly talented players that we really wanted to try out, but then we had to look at their Twitter, for example, and then the amount of red flags was just so overwhelming that obviously if there's like one or two bad tweets, okay, whatever, you can tell them like, hey, you probably shouldn't say this. But some of these people just had no filter whatsoever. It was, and it's not because they were wrong. It's not because what they said was wrong. It's just because they didn't
The way
think
they would say
before
it.
they pressed send. Yeah,
there's no gate to get into the mansion of your head. Like,
exactly. So
like, okay.
So that was that filter, and then after that, we actually had the list of players that we selected for the tryouts, and that was really just based on previous experience, and just kind of who we thought was the best fit. And we also have a few backup options. Obviously, the tryouts are going to be streamed live, so we need to make sure that everyone shows up properly and that we have subs ready. And bless you, and bless you again.
Oh, thank you.
And yeah, just making sure that everything goes smoothly. So we went through all of these different steps and found a list of players. Obviously, we don't know all of them. One thing that was very great actually was a lot of the players are players that are really talented. Like they have 4.5k peaks, and you don't get to a 4.5k peak without at least knowing what you're doing, kind of. But they have no team experience. They've just never bothered. They just play ranked. They're really good.
They just grind
but
it
they just
over and over and over.
Exactly. And they've never actively looked for a team. But then we made these applications open, and they went, I'm going to give this a shot. So what's really exciting about these tryouts is that, which are on October 5th and 6th, by the way, in case you guys want to watch them.
Yeah, that would be really cool.
There is a lot of these players, they've never showed up on a stream. They've never, I mean, maybe they've gotten trialed by like one or two teams, but they're essentially no names. And what we're looking for is to find that next, ladder star player that no one has really thought of, and showing the world that, hey, if you give us the talent, we're going to give you a top tier star player of tomorrow.
It's very cool because your guys are tapping into some like untouched talent, right? Like the talent that that it's like raw, but it hasn't been molded into that like professional kind of like star player. It's a very cool project that you guys got going on, honestly, especially because it seems like it's already moving forward. It's moving fast. I saw some of the tweets that you and Jane put out, so it seems like everything is going really well for now. So I'm really looking forward to see what comes out of that experiment, to be honest.
I think we can transition now into the next phase, which is just a quick, brief announcement and information just for you guys out there. For the first thing is that we finished our game night, and Andres was unable to attend because of his friend's wedding, so he was sad panda about that. But it was a lot of fun, and despite having the grand finals that weekend, it was still pretty decent turnout. We had 2 full lobbies for a good amount of time for pugs, and was really really fun. I had a few minutes that I could dedicate to hanging out with some people and running one of the lobbies, which is good. And if you guys are looking to improve, play with people of all kinds of skill ranks and see what that's like, having a couple people in bronze and masters in the same game is quite the experience, I must say. It's really really fun, and I found it to be really good learning environment in our lobbies. Played a lot of Symmetra this time around, which is pretty funny. But just getting my time in before the next meta kind of rolls in with this new PTR or whatever it may be. But if you guys are looking to do this sort of thing, we run our pickup groups at the last Friday of every month in our Discord. And just all you have to do is join up and see the channels unlocking and just pop in and play. This coming month is actually a little bit strange because October ends on a Thursday. So it will not be on the 1st. It will be on the 25th. So please note that in your calendars. The last Friday of October is the 25th, not the 31st. Andres, do you want to talk about our coaching that we've been doing? Maybe some of your coaching sessions and whatnot?
Yeah, last month was actually really busy. We have a lot of you guys sign up for the coaching sessions and reach out to us. We're really glad that they're going so well. I've gotten to coach some of you for about 5 months now, so it's been really satisfying kind of watching you guys grow. Sometimes realize some things that you hadn't done before. This month I actually tried a couple new things. We tried a couple drills, personally just going into a custom game and playing with each other. And it was interesting because some people don't get to play with people that are maybe higher ranked than them that often, and when they do, they pick up some things relatively fast. One of the players that I'm coaching, he plays at bronze and he's trying to learn support and he's trying to play a lot of Baptiste. And so we just went into a custom game because I wanted to show him a little bit of what different movement can do for him. And it was eye-opening for him. The first thing he notices is like, you don't jump very much. And then we spent some time kind of going around why it's not a good idea to be jumping around that much. And he instantly got it. He was like, wow, yeah, I'm making myself such a predictable target. Because at first he literally couldn't get any shots on me while I was very easily getting shots on him. And he slowly kind of started to understand that. And I thought it was really cool. So coaching sessions are going super awesome. If you guys want to participate on them, make sure you sign up for Patreon at the platinum level. And just reach out to us from Discord or email us directly, and we'll set up a time.
It was a lot of fun for me as well. We've been super busy this month, to say the least. We've had probably over 5 sessions each, plus the show, so it's been real busy. Let's keep going and talk about just some areas of improvement and some common maybe pitfalls that players have, whether it could be in playing the game or in learning. Because I know for me, when I'm learning how to coach and learning how to play, it can be pretty different than what I'm actually doing in the game. Sometimes my approach in jumping into a comp game could be learning a new hero or learning a specific mechanic on that hero, or maybe even learning the macro game no matter what hero I'm playing. Those are more learning based environments versus kind of the just general playing with your friends type of mentality. So why don't we talk a little bit about that with regards to whatever you want to talk about first, IoStux. We'll be a little bit free on this topic.
Well, I mean, I guess we can just go through it top to bottom. So
Sure.
the first point is mechanics, and mechanics is interesting because it's game agnostic, which means that mechanics is kind of one skill that really transitions very well into other first-person shooters. And a lot of players in Overwatch, they've previously played other first-person shooters. They played Counter-Strike or Quake or Unreal or Team Fortress, etc. I think I'm just going to go over like some common topics regarding mechanics. I think the biggest misconception regarding aim for players is that their aim is bad, which is very often when I work with clients and they get into these sessions and they always have to fill out a little form with some information. they always say, my biggest weakness is mechanics. Like there's all of these fights, and if I could just land more shots, then I would win them. But generally speaking, if you lose a fight and your answer to that is, well, if I landed more shots, I would have won that. It's kind of like going to, one of those, weird ladies on the street with the crystal ball, like that just tell you a bunch of stuff that's always going to be true. Like, oh, you've recently had had a discussion with a loved one or something. Like, of course. So it's kind of the same thing with aim. Like, yes, if you had an aimbot, you sure as heck would have been able to win that fight, right? But that isn't always the main goal. And sometimes players have the aim to go to a higher rating, but they just don't have everything else that's needed to get them there. So rather than aim, that's kind of the main thing. For movement, I think the biggest issue is that players are underestimating their movement a lot. They just think that, oh, well, I'm just going to spam AD super hard and then I'm going to, have top tier movement. Or they just don't think about it at all. Movement based sessions are actually very interesting because they're usually the ones where my clients get back to me like usually after they have this session, they're super motivated and they just want to hop into a game and try the stuff out that we've talked about. And whenever I have a session focused on movement, I already know that 2 hours later they're going to DM me and they're going to go like, "Yo, like, can have my babies or something?" Because it's something.
This is
Movement is
working.
something where we're like it has very immediate results. If you talk about positioning or something, it's going to take weeks for that to really settle in. But with movement, it's something that people just don't think about. So when you tell them, like, just think about it for once, and then they do it, they're going to go like, "Whoa, this is weird," And on one side, it's also partially placebo because when you're really focusing super hard on your movement, you tend to forget about your aim, and people tend to aim better once they forget about aim. It's one of those things where the less you think about it, the better you're going to get at it, kind of. So I think movement is very exciting, but mechanics overall are rarely the issue. The only time that mechanics, honestly, if you're, and this is a bold statement, if you're in Diamond, then there's a 99.9999% chance that mechanics are not an issue for you whatsoever. Like the vast majority of Diamond players have the mechanics necessary to reach at least high masters, if not even GM. It's really just to get, because you don't get to Diamond without having at least decent mechanics. It's the term Diamond level mechanics doesn't really exist. There's just it's kind of in categories. So you have like bottom tier aim, bottom tier mechanics, which is most bronze to silver players. Then you have just bad mechanics, which is usually gold and platinum. Like not bad mechanics, but just very average, right? But once you reach diamond, your mechanics don't really improve that much. The only time you see another like really big jump in mechanics is if you get into the very like top end of top 500. And that's mainly because players are incredibly specialized and they practice, a lot more. But yeah, it's if you're in silver or if you're in plat, then you can maybe look into mechanics a little bit. But besides that, for most diamond players at that point, chances are something else is probably more important.
No, and I do agree with you that a lot of emphasis gets put into mechanics, right? There's a ton of videos out there that teach you how to aim. There's a ton of videos out there that are telling you like you gotta move here, you gotta move there, etc. This is how you have to approach it. But I do agree with you that sometimes it's not one of the most important parts to learn, right? Because when you put a lot of emphasis on mechanics, you sometimes lose sight of the goal of the game. Sometimes you tend to ignore the objective. As a Widowmaker, you might get too focused on trying to get those kills rather than repositioning to a place where you're an actual threat and people can't just walk into your team, etc. And I do think that the majority of players do have good mechanics because I see that too in my coaching sessions. The majority of players I coach, even those at gold and stuff, tend to have relatively good aim, and sometimes they are really confused why they feel like they perform well and their mechanics are good, yet they're kind of stuck at the rank that they're at. Maybe let's talk about some more of the stuff that you as a coach can help them with aside from mechanics.
Well, one of the biggest topics, and it's the word you always hear thrown around, is game sense and positioning. positioning is a little bit more of a science, because positioning at its heart, like it's calculable. Like you could write a very complex computer program that could tell you the most optimal position at any given moment during a game, right?
That's
So
why high level
positioning is
players have such like a predictable track of where they're moving, right?
exactly, and that's also why they can, fairly easily predict where the enemy is going to play. Like in professional matches, there are no real secrets to positioning. Like it's really difficult to just sneak up on someone. And game sense, on the other hand, it's less of a science, it's more of an art, where you can't teach, like you can't write a computer program that has good game sense, because you can't put it into numbers. It's really just a feeling. Like the in order to explain what game sense is, I always like to give this example. So game sense is when someone on your team, for example, gets picked, and you're asking yourself, is this fight just lost and I should just save my ultimate? Or do I need to use my ultimate to come back from this and win the fight? And that's something that where you can't just write down a simple rule, but you have to understand, you have to look at where everyone is standing, how many ultimates everyone has, how much space people have, where they're holding, what abilities they've used, how much pressure is on you, how much pressure is on the enemy team, and all of these different factors. And from that, just come up with your best guess. Like you cannot always with confidence make game sense based decisions. Is just something where you need to, take the best guess that you have in any given situation, and then say, okay, I think this feels like a good time to use my ultimate, or this feels like it wouldn't be a good time to use my ultimate.
And a lot
And
of that sometimes comes
yeah,
from just raw experience, right? Just being able to
yeah,
play the game and being put into enough situations where that sort of instinct starts developing. And we in the show we sometimes call it the spidey sense, right? When you just get that
yeah,
feeling that you need to do something and it just activates at that moment.
yeah, exactly. And it's one of those things that, it's always said, but people just need to use the replay feature, and they can improve their game sense tenfold over a month. Because it's very difficult to develop game sense unless you actually look back and look at those fights, and then, because you don't know the result of your decision until you've made that decision, so you can't actually learn from it. But when you review that team fight, you can look at your decision. Either you used your ultimate or you saved it, and maybe you used it but you lost the fight anyways, right? So your ultimate was wasted. Now you can look back at that fight from a completely different perspective. Okay, this ultimate was a waste, right? I just didn't get enough value out of it to turn this fight around. Maybe I just used my ultimate wrong and there was a way for me to get enough value out of it. Or maybe I missed something and I shouldn't have used it to begin with. Maybe I just overestimated my chances. And that's really how game sense gets developed. And it's not this ambiguous, mystical, magical talent or skill that people are just born with in their genetics. It really is just, if you focus on it for a couple months, it's something that everyone can learn. It's not like rocket science. In the end, it's still a video game.
I have a question about this particular point because of some of the coaching sessions I've had over the last 2 months. The one common trend, even in my own gameplay, is trying to identify moments not where I'm making a calculated decision, but rather like identifying in my students or in my own game where a moment happens and a decision was made that didn't have all the information. For example, like they didn't see something. They didn't observe a particular thing in the kill feed. They haven't been tapping the tab key, so they didn't know what was there. Or they haven't built up enough of kind of their situational awareness of the game overall to know so and so's definitely got their ultimate by the way that they're positioning in the game. How do you talk to your clients and your own game and improve in this respect where training observation of things that they don't know are happening, even if they're just as simple as looking at the top right hand corner of the kill feed or checking your cooldowns and getting a feel for them?
So it's two parts. For one, it's about consolidating information and making sure that they know what they need to care about and what they don't need to care about. And two, it's about giving them kind of easy, I don't know what the English word is, like easy ways, mnemonics, I guess, to remember when to do these things. So you start out slow. So
Habits.
usually if someone doesn't check out the kill feed often, what I tell them is do the following. So first of all, take the kill feed and strip it of every piece of information except one colored box. You don't care about who died on either side. You don't care about what their name is. You don't care about how they died. All you care about is on the left side of that kill feed, is that a blue box or is that a red box? Because
That's funny.
makes it much easier. Because, and this is something people don't realize, if you're in a contenders game or in an Overwatch League level match, the majority of decisions can be made just with that information.
That
Because
information, yeah.
if 4 people on your team die and 2 on the enemy team, you don't care about who died. You're going to reset.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
The only exception is, if it's a mercy res, then you need to flip the colors, obviously. And during certain metas, if your main tank, for example, dies, you need to play differently compared to when one of your DPS dies. So it gets a little bit more complex. But if you're just playing ranked, if you're in Masters or below, 99% of your decision making can be done just by looking at the color of that one box, and you completely fade out the rest. And then the second
Simplifying
thing,
what they need to know.
exactly, and the second thing is giving them an easy way to remember it. So for example, telling them, okay, every single time that you either disengage from a fight or you're running back from spawn, you just press tab and you start counting how many ultimates your team has. And then giving them some basic things that they can use that information for. For example, if their teammates have, a lot of ultimates, right? Then they might want to, they can use their ultimate fairly, either very early, so that they can win the fight off of it, or they might want to hold onto their ultimate because they have kind of that safety net they can fall back on with their teammates' ultimates. Whereas if they are the only person who has an ultimate, then they need to think about it in a different way, where maybe they want to hold on to that ultimate because they can't win with just that ultimate on its own. They don't have the follow-up from it from their team, or that's the only ultimate they have, so they need to play proactively with it. So that which side of the story you tell them depends on what character they play. Obviously, if they're playing someone super impactful like Sigma, then you would tell them, okay, play more, save your ultimate in that situation, play proactive in this situation. Whereas with reactive ultimates like Lucius Beat, it's the other way around. And that way they it's no longer the kill feed with a bunch of names and colors and hero icons and abilities. And it's no longer the tab screen with more hero icons and all status and percentages and stats and everything, but you simplify it down to something super simple. Count the colored boxes and count the little check marks before the people's, hero pictures. And from there, they can start building that into a habit because it's super easy to execute. It's super easy to become second nature at it. And once they become second nature at that, that's when you can start introducing more information. Maybe
Complex
now
information.
now we're looking at who died. Now we're looking at when they died. Now we're looking and you just keep adding information until eventually they have the knowledge necessary to figure out, do I really need all of the information, or can I just kind of get a quick, it's about speed versus depth. Sometimes you want all of the information to really make a smart decision. For example, if you're running back from spawn and you want to plan for the next fight, in that case, you really want to look at every information and kind of plan out what you're going to do in the next fight. But if you're in the middle of a team fight, you can't do that. It's too busy.
Right.
Too much stuff is going on.
You can't tap out for 3
So-
seconds and just look at that screen.
Exactly. So then you just look at the simplified thing. You don't care about all of that extra information, and you just try to make an educated guess based on the little information that you can kind of soak in that very high octane speedy moment.
And that is so true, because Overwatch is such a big information game. I feel like your mechanics are there for you to execute on that information, right? But at the end of the game, or at the end of the day, a big part of playing Overwatch is being able to soak in all that information and making the appropriate decisions from it. And you can really, really get a ton of information just from looking at the kill feed. One of the best examples, again, from last month's coaching session that I had with one of them was that we're in King's Row, and the fight had broken loose. It was super hectic. Ultimates were flying around. He manages to survive, and his team is winning the match. And at this point, I'm watching him and kind of like guiding him through the game, kind of like pointing some stuff that he should remember. And in the middle of the fight, I'm just observing, so I can notice a lot of things with the kill feed and everything. But I let him know, hey, there's a Mercy inside of the bus station room, and he's super confused. He's like, what? What do you, because it's behind his team already. Nobody has seen anything. And he goes check the bus station room, and in fact, there is a Mercy hiding in there. And he's so confused. He's like, how did you know that there was a Mercy hiding in there? So I tell him, well, it was a process of deduction. It turns out that you guys had killed the Moira. Then I saw in the kill feed that the Moira got resurrected by the Mercy, and then the Moira came fading out of the bus station room, but the Mercy didn't follow. So that means that the only place that the Mercy can be is in the bus station room. And he was blown away. He was like, what? You thought all of that like just then? And yeah, that's like the amount of information you can get from a kill feed can be super high sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't like to go the full circle. IoStux's information here is process of learning A to B, where you're identifying colors, and then the next step is what is in that box. So you have the building of what's going on awareness, and then you have what specific things are going on in that awareness category. And there's something cool that I want to kind of see what you both think about this, because I've noticed a common trend. I've got one of my coachees that pretty much sticks to one hero almost 95% of the games that we have for his coaching sessions. And the others are kind of more categorical players where they stick with support, or they stick with tank, or they stick with DPS, or even just like main support, even a little bit more narrow. And I found that the most advice that I've been trending towards lately has been pick like 2 heroes and don't do anything else, because all of the other things you're learning are about the game. You're not learning things about the heroes anymore. Like at this point, you need to learn the game. You don't need to learn what this hero does. And if you do need to learn what this hero does, let's do that right now. And then next month, we'll do the same hero again, but we're going to learn the game. You know what I mean? So you kind of like IoStux's method here for me has been telling the people that I'm coaching to reduce the amount of things they have to learn so they can focus on certain stuff, i.e. learning the game and then staying on one hero so that you don't have to worry about learning other heroes at that time. How does that sound to you guys? Because I know you do have to learn what other heroes can do, but more of like from your point of view on this hero rather than from their point of view playing as that hero. Like, I don't have to learn how to play Reinhardt to understand what Reinhardt does. I can just play, Moira and see what the Reinhardts are doing.
Yeah, well, I think that I'll let IoStux go in a second. From my perspective, I've learned if you can learn as many heroes as you can, you do get a little bit of a perspective on their strengths and their weaknesses, what you can do and you can't do with those heroes. But then when you're playing one specific hero, there is a level of specialization that goes on, right? When you're learning what you can do against every single hero, and as you get more nuance with that, you can actually outduel certain heroes, or like, hey, this matchup I have to respect, I can't take, or maybe I can take if these circumstances are available to me, right? So I do think that there's kind of like some levels that
Give
you
and
kind of go
take.
through. Yeah. What do you think?
Okay, I'm gonna use an analogy. So let's say you have like a house, and the house kind of sucks, right? So you call some people to fix your house. You call an electrician that fixes the electricity, a cleaning lady that cleans everything up. You have a gardener that takes care of the garden. You have a construction worker that fixes the roof. You have a plumber that fixes the pipes, right? So they're all working on the same thing, but they have very, very unique roles, and they all have very unique toolboxes, right? Like the tools that a gardener needs have nothing to do with the tools that the plumber needs, have nothing to do with the tools that the cleaning lady needs, right? And when you go to the cleaning lady and you show her, yo, there's like this, there's this weird stain, I don't know, whatever. She's going to tell you, oh yeah, I need to use, this mop, which is a little bit rougher, and then I need to use this alcohol-based cleaning solution. And like, she has all of these tools at her disposal, and she knows exactly what tool to use for that situation. Now, if we transition that into Overwatch, we essentially, instead of having gardeners and plumbers and everything, we have main tanks, off tanks, flex DPS, main support, etc. Like we have the 6 different roles in Overwatch, and each of those also have their own little toolbox. And it's about choosing one of those roles, especially now that role queue is out, and figuring out what each of your tools can do. That's step number 1. Figuring out in which situation those tools are appropriate, and then trying to learn how to use those tools properly. So Jeff Kaplan, for example, he made a quote a while ago where he said that platinum players don't play goats. They pick the goats heroes, but they don't play goats. And that's one of the things that players need to keep in mind about just picking one character and then kind of sticking with them, because they're using, and this is an analogy that a lot of my coaches probably know, they're using a screwdriver to tighten like a nut, and it just, like, you can do it, but it's going to suck really bad, and it doesn't teach you anything about using a screwdriver, and it's going to be a huge waste of time. Like it's kind of the same thing with trying to like if your entire team is trying to play dive, right? You have like a Hammond, a Sombra, a Tracer, a Lucio, a Moira, or whatever, and then you go in and you pick Reaper, not Reaper, Reinhardt, right? And the problem is that you're going to learn, or you're going to try your best to make that pick not suck in that specific situation, and it'll teach you some fundamental stuff about Reinhardt. But since you're a main tank player, it's better to look at your toolbox and figure out, okay, which tool is best for the situation, because in the end, it's a choice, right? You, as a main tank, you'll have to learn all main tanks eventually. You can't be a main tank player and only play Reinhardt. You need to learn all of them eventually. So you might as well play a practice, say Winston, in a situation where you can play Winston properly, because it's dive, the map is appropriate, you're going to have the proper support. And then when the time comes around, you can play Reinhardt and play him in the appropriate situation. And the great thing about this method is that, for one, you're still specialized. As you said, it's very important that you don't just play every character in the game at once, because you're not going to get anywhere. You need to specialize into these roles. The other advantage is that it automatically puts the correct amount of time into characters based on how much time they need. So right now we are in a Sigma meta, which means that main tanks are going to play Orisa most of the time, which means that they want to spend most of their time getting good at Orisa. But as long as they pick Orisa in situations where she's good, they're going to get just the right amount of time. Like if they play Orisa 80% of the time, they're going to practice Orisa 80% of the time. So I agree. On one hand, you do need to specialize. On the other hand, if you really want to get the most out of your practice, you do have to make sure that it at least somewhat makes sense. In lower ranks like silver or something, team comp isn't going to make sense. God bless you, you can play whatever you want. Everything is going to be a chaotic mess
to
either
be
way.
fair, most of our clients are within that range, right? We're not
exactly
doing a lot of Masters, Diamond plus coaching levels. We're kind
Mhm.
of trying to get people comfortable with learning the game. And the common thread with folks, as
Exactly,
everyone knows in bronze and silver and gold, is that they're just simply not playing enough. So if you can reduce the amount of things that you need to do, when you do play, you're actually learning.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I've had people that they play like say 10 hours a week, which is on the lower end, but it's around average for bronze to silver players, maybe even a little above average. And at that point in time, like 10 hours is enough to get to gold, maybe platinum. It'll take a little while, but it's definitely doable. But then they tell you what heroes they play, and they just tell you, oh, well, I just play whatever is needed. And all of a sudden, those 10 hours turn into 30 minutes a week on each character. And if you get put into a game against someone who also plays 10 hours a week, but he only plays 2 different characters, all of a sudden that's 30 minutes versus 5 hours of experience per week that you're competing against, and you just don't stand a chance whatsoever.
Yeah, so that really comes down to your personal preference, and you do have to kind of like gauge that yourself, right? Don't dilute your practice too much. Don't be trying to cram in too many things at the same time. Be mindful with your time, I guess.
Yeah,
And
always
the
take
the
it
cool
one
thing
step at
about
a
that
time.
too is that you keep that skill a lot of the times. It doesn't need to be relearned if you're putting in a lot of hours over the course of like a habit. The habit sticks versus like learning a little bit at a time with all these heroes, and over the course of a long time, you still haven't really had the same amount of time that's been quality learning. It's been super split and spread out, and you've been making the same mistakes and doing the same habits over and over and over again.
Now, we've talked a lot about maybe mechanics, a little bit of game sense, and the stuff that you really have to start learning around the game. But one of the things that you do talk a lot about in your channel is about attitude and the right attitude to approach the game. And I think that sometimes that can be even more important than some of the rest of the stuff, because depending on your attitude, you might be blocking yourself, right? You might be making it harder on yourself than it should. And sometimes you might be alienating some of the people that might be able to help you on your journey as well. So, why don't we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So regarding it, it's very true. But one of the things that I've just kind of come to term with is that some people you just can't help. When I started coaching, I had this very unhealthy mindset of, if one of my clients doesn't climb, I should feel bad. I should give them their money back, and I'm a trash coach. But now I've developed a more objective point of view where, you know, if I look at that player, and if I see that all they've been doing since our session is just one tricking widow and flaming people, then I say, I'm sorry that I couldn't help you, but you you didn't want the help. You didn't listen to, you just didn't change, right? And attitude is one of those things that you can change if you're actually qualified to do it. I'm going to be honest, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not going to pretend that I'm a sports psychologist. There are people like Blake Panashevich. He used to work for LA Gladiators. I always refer like my really tough clients to him because he actually knows what he's talking about. I know my stuff about the game and kind of basic psychology, but not the more advanced stuff. Um,
Sure.
so what I usually tell people, if it's not even about tilting, it's just about objectively just having a garbage mindset about the game, about wanting to go pro because you want fame and money, not because you love the game, or just thinking that your teammates are super garbage and it's never your fault, right? If someone comes to me like that, then I'm just very blunt with them and I tell them, like, you're embarrassing yourself, like you're lying to yourself right now. Either you take this game, like, and I'm just very upfront and I tell them, like, we've been here for 3 minutes, like I can cancel this, I can refund the session, I would much rather give you your money back than just waste my time. And just kind of dropping them into the cold water. And for a lot of people, there have been a lot of just wake up calls where they just, out of sheer, I guess, shame almost, because they've been in their own bubble and maybe they've been surrounded by friends that just build this echo chamber that always agrees with them, and they've been led to believe all of those things that they say. But then once they talk to someone whose opinion they respect, and that person tells them, like hey, can we actually get to work, or you're gonna waste my time, like this is ridiculous, then they sit down and they say, and they take like a critical look at it. And of course some people aren't going to change, but a lot of people really just need that, that slap to kind of to wake them up, and then they go, oh, I mean, if you say it, like, it does kind of make sense. And humbling is the best word that I would describe a lot of my sessions, and a lot of coaching sessions in general, with people who have a bad mindset, where once they see themselves play and they see how much more there is to learn, it can be like eye opening for them, and it can completely change them as people. And that's one of the most rewarding things about coaching, because very recently someone messaged me on Discord, and he just told me, like, hey, I haven't messaged you in like 6 months. I just wanted to tell you that I quit Overwatch like a month after the session, but that session has been like one of the most useful things in my life, because I didn't utilize what you've told me in the game, but you've just made me realize that if I want something, I actually have to take it serious and work for it, and not fuck around, excuse the language. And that has helped them a lot. So attitude is something that it's not going to some attitude related issues can be fixed over time, but most of the time it's either a case of the client is 16 and they just have to grow up, and age will fix it on its own, or they're in their 20s and they just need to take a second to look at themselves, grow up, and just say, okay, I really want this. I can't screw around. I just need to get my shit together and actually be serious about this. I can't afford to just blame my teammates all of the time and do all of this childish, ragey stuff. I just need to, if I want to become a professional at this game, I need to start acting like a professional.
And sometimes a big part of it comes down to perspective, right? Just being able to take yourself apart and look at it objectively, look at it at what you're trying to accomplish. I think that some people sometimes get frustrated because they maybe haven't set themselves clear goals, right? They want to rank up, and that is their goal, right? But they don't have a very specific, I want to reach diamond with this hero and learn this particular skill set and role, which can be an achievable role and something that you can work towards and maybe separate into bite-sized pieces. And also what you say too, sometimes because they don't have that clear role or that clear direction or a clear idea of why they're not climbing up, it's very easy for them to just blame somebody else, right? Blame their teammates, blame the blizzard, blame the competitive matchmaker, whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, really, if you want to improve in a game like Overwatch, you really have to put the emphasis on yourself and look to yourself most of the time, rather than think, oh, I lost a game because my teammates were bad. Think to yourself, how could it have been better so that even with the teammates that I had, I could have won that game. And so most of the time I try to encourage the people that I'm coaching to think about it critically. How can you have had changed the outcome of that battle? Not your Mercy, not your Reinhardt, not anybody else in that team, but how could have you done things better so that they wouldn't have struggled in those ways? And I think that it's a much healthier approach, because then you're not always blaming everyone else and becoming a super toxic and a negative person, but instead you're always looking inward in a way, how can I grow, right? How can I improve?
Now, I just want to do a brief disclaimer that IoStux briefly touched on this, which is that sometimes it is in a category where coaches and friends and echo chambers can't help you. You do need to go seek professional help, with whatever that looks like. We're kind of in a day and age where a lot of people just don't do that. And I speak from experience, not personally, but because of all of the touch points with my personal family. My wife suffers from extreme OCD and anxiety. My brother has manic depression. And I would say that I probably have some sort of minor cases of those, not to the point where I need to take medication, but I believe that no one is safe from these type of mental disorders. And whether you have them with a medical condition or whether you have a minor case, it doesn't really matter. It's more of a spectrum type of thing. It's kind of how you deal with them. And please go seek professional help if you do need those sort of things. And if you can't afford it, please reach out to some people in your community. Don't talk to people online about this sort of thing. This is something that's come up even in our Discord over the course of time, and just being around for long enough, you can see people reaching out in the wrong places. So definitely speak in your personal community, in your families, and in your friend groups, and in your locale. That also being said, I wanted to go back to what Andres was saying, which was kind of in the realm of having these unreasonable expectations. This is a pretty common thread, even for my personal life. It's something that I think IoStux had kind of generalized it into just growing up. But for some people, I've got, even my dad, sometimes I'll talk with him and he's just got these completely unreasonable expectations about just something minor.
Yeah.
Like yard work. I mean, it could be as simple as yard work, and it can be as complex as your job. I mean, unreasonable expectations can bleed into anything, and it is a very important life skill that sometimes isn't a growing up thing. It's kind of a mindset thing, I guess.
Yeah,
you could
you
say.
always
You want to
have
talk
to
a little
keep
bit about
yourself
that?
reined in.
Yeah. You want to talk a little bit about expectations and setting goals, kind of those two things hand in hand?
Yeah, I know that a lot of the players that I've worked with, um, for one, expectations, but also about motivation. Because
Mm.
whenever I look at a player's motivation and their expectations, uh, there's either extrinsic or there's intrinsic motivation. So the former being they're doing it for someone else or for some sort of gain, either respect or monetary gain or anything. But the players that are truly successful, they're not in that category. They're in the intrinsic category, where the reason that they want to improve is not because they want to reach a certain skill rating or because they want to go pro. It's just because they love the game, so they play it a lot and they want to get really good at it just for the sake of getting really good at it. And those are the players that I really pay special attention to, because I know that they have the mindset that can actually lead to a professional career later down the line. And those are the players that do make it from, diamond to top 500 in 6 to 8 months. Whereas someone who says, oh, well, the reason I want to do this is because, I'm the worst player in our friend group and I don't want to be anymore. They're going to climb a bit, but they're very soon going to hit that barrier where they just can't get any further because all of a sudden they're competing against players that want to get better for the sake of improving. And that's really where the expectations come in. It's players are expecting that, I guess, getting good. So there's two sides of the coin. So some people, especially more mature players, they tend to underestimate how much effort getting good at a video game actually takes. I've literally today someone messaged me, one of my clients, and they said, like, I really underestimated how much work it's going to take for me to actually get to GM, because you can tell them that it's difficult, but they're never fully going to grasp it until they actually start improving, and then it kind of dawns on them, and they just didn't expect how much effort it actually takes to belong to that 0.001% of the player base. And then on the other hand, you have the people who are super confident, who just think, oh, well, I'm just going to buy myself a bunch of coaching and I'm going to be top 500 in 2 months and I'm going to get signed to a pro org. And you have to tell them, like, that's not going to happen. That's just not how that
how
works.
Mafia works.
Exactly. You have to put in the work. So with expectations, it's not about having no expectations. It's about finding that being realistic, right? About not overestimating, about not underestimating. People always say, oh, well, and even I have said a while ago on some of my older videos that it's just best to completely absolve yourself from expectations, because then, you're never going to get disappointed. And that's kind of a fairy tale approach where, it's the kind of stuff that I would tell to a 6-year-old to make sure that they, stay happy or whatever. But if someone is serious about improving, yes, you should have some expectations. If you go in and you practice for 2 weeks and you're not making any improvement, then you shouldn't go, oh, well, I wasn't expecting any improvement. Like, you should expect some improvement, right? And it's fine to be a little bit frustrated if you're not making any progress, but it's about improving at a video game is really like being a scientist. It's the best scientists aren't people that want a fancy title and then get tenure and earn a bunch of money. The best scientists are people that are curious, and the best players in video games are the people that are curious, right? Who want to understand everything about the game. And these expectations are a part of what they need to understand. They need to know exactly how much work needs to be put in order to get to a certain in order to achieve a certain goal. And it's not something that they can skip over. And pragmatism is one of the most useful traits that a player can have if they're serious about improving. Just pragmatism, realism, and just leaving your feelings, like
Being a little down
being
to
able
earth.
to, like down to earth, just thinking about it objectively. Like, hey, this is a game. What do I need to do in order to achieve what? Right.
You just
And
said our mission statement and why we named the show Lab. Unscripted, by the way.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's essentially, what it is. And
Yeah.
regarding the lab thing, by the way, I'm going to go a little on a little tangent here because it's
Oh, buckle up.
frustrated
Let's
me.
go.
No,
I'm
not about you guys, right? But one of the
Okay,
things
I'm
that
out.
that I one of the things that I realized, well, kind of one of the things that I realized is so there were two phases in my career. So there was the the phase that I don't want to talk about, which was actually the majority of like the first 1.5 years, 1 to 2 years. And then there was, the one that I'm actually proud of, talking about. And during those early stages, what I did, and I'm going to admit that here, and it's very present out of my YouTube content, I overcomplicated things intentionally because I knew that it was what people wanted to hear. One of the issues that I got with my coaching sessions was that eventually, and this is going to sound so pretentious and arrogant, but I don't care. Eventually, I got competent at it, which meant that I could explain complex things in a way that makes them sound less complex, right? Because that's what I'm always
Which is
striving
a mark
towards.
of you knowing what you're talking about.
Yeah, but the problem was, my clients didn't like it because they left the session feeling like, oh well, he just told me a bunch of super basic stuff. Why did I pay for that, right? So I had to kind of take those simple explanations and just add a bunch of fancy words and whatever into it. And it was the same information, just 10 times more complex to understand. But people loved it. They soaked it up. And even to this day, it's just a few people, right? A lot of the coaches that I know, they don't do this, but some of them, they focus more on just using fancy words and attaching numbers to everything and huge analysis. And I mean, I'm the one saying it. I wrote a 70-page thesis on the team comp that people, right? But they're trying to make something more complicated than it actually is. And I think that goes against the spirit of coaching, because what we as coaches should always strive to do is to understand the game more and more so that we can digest it and we can process all of that information into something that we can give to lower ranked players and they can use to improve it. The ultimate goal is that eventually you can summarize the game so much that you can get someone from silver to diamond in just one session, because you just explain things so fluently and so simply that it's just intuitive to them. That's the end goal. But it seemed that some people have kind of their expectations have changed. The players' expectations have changed, where they don't want the simple explanation. They want the explanation that makes them feel smart. And we're coaches, instead of giving people what they need to hear, they resort to just telling them what they want to hear. And I think that's very dangerous, because it's not progressing coaching as a whole, not just in Overwatch but in general, but it's regressing it. It's just becoming less and less useful, because at that point it just turns into scientific lectures that you're not going to understand, and you're going to feel super smart for listening to it, but you're not going to be
like
able
going
to
to
take
a TED talk versus like actually learning something.
You gotta remember
Exactly.
to always
And
jump at 38 degrees with
that's
Winston.
and that's actually one of the critiques that I got for my show. Some people are just telling me, why was this video 2 hours long? You could have just condensed it into 20 minutes, right? And yes, I could have, but then I would have to use a lot more complex words and talk super fast and just make everything super overloaded. And that's not the goal, right?
There's no
I want
groundwork.
to exactly. So and it shows, because that, and again, without touting my own horn too much, that first episode that I made on positioning, I mean, okay, there were some idiots, right? It's people that just kind of flamed me, but the amount of people that actually got back to me and they told me, like, I've been playing this game for 2 years and I've been stuck in gold, and 2 weeks after watching that video, I'm now like 10 SR away from diamond. And that's something that just I don't really think has ever happened before. And that's what gives me that confidence that it's not about making things more complicated and going into more detail. It's
But
about
accessible.
but it's about taking the information that we already have and making it more accessible, making it so that people who aren't studying the game for 8 hours a day, to help them understand it in a way that's intuitive to them, where even if they don't have a lot of experience playing games, they can pick it up and they can get decent at it. And that's kind of the goal that I'm trying to pursue as a coach.
Hey, well said. To kind of close off this conversation, I did want to point out that we never really talked about any gear or mouse sensitivity or, what monitor
Settings.
you should be using or settings, because I think I agree with Stux over here, and you have some videos and some blogs about this actually on your page. But even though all these things are important, and you should, if you're getting serious about Overwatch at some point or another, you should look into some of these things and try to improve your setup as you can afford it. But they're more of commodities that are not essential to you becoming a great player. And I'm gonna pass it to you over here so you can talk a little bit about this. But yeah, they're just things that you should not be worried about at first if you want to improve.
Yeah. So we need to set a baseline, right? When I am telling someone that gear is not important, what I don't mean is that they can use their laptop trackpad, play at 25 FPS with 200 ping, and get top 500. Okay. At a certain point, gear does become, make a difference. What I am referring to is that, it doesn't really matter if your mouse, is only 500 hertz instead of 1000 hertz, or, if your mouse weighs 80 grams instead of 67 grams. It isn't super important whether your screen has 240 hertz or, 60 hertz. And,
There's a baseline.
At that point, exactly, that's a baseline, right? If you what I like to give as an example is EQO, right? Because a long time ago, there was this interview with him on the OWL page, and he said he was playing at like 180 ping. He was playing at 30 FPS, and he managed to get top 5 in ranked on like 4 accounts, right? Because, he knew he couldn't change anything about it, but he just played with it. Like he just made it work, right? And of course, eventually he upgraded, and that did help him out. I'm not saying that those upgrades don't help you. What I am saying is that if you're in platinum right now and you're getting a smooth, constant 60 FPS, if your mouse doesn't just randomly stop tracking every 20 seconds, if your screen is larger than, your phone or a Tamagotchi, you're probably fine. And what's keeping you from climbing is not really your gear. You can get new gear. It's going to feel nice. But from my experience, the people that did end up getting new gear, they're excited about it for a week. They play better for a week, which is entirely placebo. And then after that, they just go back to, where they were. And now they have, this fancy 240 hertz monitor in front of them. And they're still hard stuck.
Just reminding them of their failure.
Exactly. So that's, kind of going. So yeah, gear is important, and something that a lot of people also think. They tell me that like I just don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to gear, but quite the opposite. I was actually very addicted to gear. It's insane. So I can't show you, but
let's not lie. Gear is fun, and having fancy gear is
yeah,
very nice.
like,
So
Yeah,
we're not saying you shouldn't get gear. Like if you have the money, if you can
exactly.
afford it, by
Like,
all means.
On Reddit, there's this subreddit, mouse review, right? And one of the top posts on that subreddit is actually by me, where I took a Zowie FK2 and I modded the cable to be custom. I changed, I put like grip tape on it, and I changed the mouse feed, and like I was addicted to that sort of stuff. I sound like a like an addict or something, but I spent so much money on it. I had like 10 different mice for all different things, and I tried all these mouse pads and all of these keyboards. Like my keyboard, okay, just for reference, okay, I'm gonna show you something interesting. I'm gonna break my keyboard for a second. If I can get it. There we go. Okay. So I have a very special keyboard just to kind of put into perspective, how addicted I got to this. So this keyboard, oh my god, I need to unplug it real quick. There we go. So it's a custom
Oh, you have the
keyboard,
modular
okay?
ones, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And I use green switches, which are like clicky and hard on some keys, on like my Q and E key, because I don't want to accidentally press those buttons. But I use the clear switches on my WASD so I could strafe faster.
Oh, this is
okay?
like ultra modded.
And obviously, I don't care about that anymore. But
you're stuck with your bad decisions.
Yeah, okay. And these key switches I can't show you because it's unplugged. They're translucent, okay? Because it looks super dope. So I spent way too much money on gear. Okay. So yes, I do know how mice work and how mouse modding works and keyboards and everything. I know like everything about it. I could, when I retire, I'm gonna open a mouse shop or something, or like. And because I know so much about it, that's why I tell people, you don't need this keyboard. Like it's sick. Like it's super cool, but you don't need it. it's super overkill, and it's not gonna help you, magically climb or anything.
Yeah.
So
There's something that I
yes,
told a couple of people that asked me about gear was that, like you said, there's a baseline. There's some sort of break even point where you're gonna see it's kind of like what we call bell curve, but it's
yeah,
only like it's gonna go real fast at one point, and
yeah,
then
yeah,
after you get to here, it's just like, everything else doesn't matter. And
yeah,
on top of that, they're just like asking me what gear I use. I'm like, I just like the convenience of this. And I think that a lot of it after you hit critical mass is just convenience and nicety. But for professional players, to me, I feel like pros end up buying things to extend kind of their longevity of being able to play the game, like reducing injuries, reducing the ability to like feel uncomfortable for long sessions. That's what I feel like a lot of the pros end up going with. It's just stuff to kind
Yeah,
of
or the
help them
stuff that is
stick around longer.
sponsoring them too. They tend to go with that
Yeah,
as
and then
well.
they have sponsors on top of that, of course.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. You can give a pro like almost any like reasonable sensitivity, any mouse, and they're just gonna do fine. And
Yeah.
again, just to get into the whole argument of gear doesn't matter, like for my laptop, okay, this is the mouse that I use, and for
Oh
all
my
of
god,
you,
I get it.
all of you, all of you Zoomers who don't know what this is, okay, this is a trackball. It has like a little thing you can turn, and it's awesome because you
It's
don't have to move
vertical.
it around, so you don't need like a large mouse pad, okay.
Those
And
actually are super good for audio editing
they're
in general.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're really nice, right? So that's what I use them for, and yeah, like
One of the guys down my hall dumpstered me on Halo 1 lands with that thing. I was like,
Oh my
okay,
god.
I'm out. I'm
exactly,
out.
like
I'm
I
losing to a
just
guy with a trackball.
yeah, I just use what's comfortable. Like I have a huge QCK Plus that I used when I play competitively, but right now I'm using like one of these small mouse pads because it makes my desk look nicer than having like the huge cloth thing there, right?
Yeah.
So in the end, you need to look at what you're trying to do and then settle your expectations, right? It's not about getting the greatest mouse that all of the pros are using and the huge and the best mouse pad in the world. Like pretty much all you need to compete, all you need in order to get top 500, okay, or like obviously you can get it with less than what I'm about to recommend, but kind of the minimum recommendations that I give is you need to be able to hit a consistent 60 fps. You need to have a mouse that from like the last 8 years that doesn't spin out, like that doesn't stop tracking if you move it too fast, which pretty much everyone has. And you need to have, the only thing that I guess you do need to invest in if you're serious about competing is a large enough mouse pad.
Mouse
Like
pad.
if you want to play with a, like that's really the only thing where I would say that's something that
And it's the
where you can
cheapest one.
Yeah, that's
genuinely
the cheapest upgrade you can make.
The cheapest
yeah, like
peripheral you can go
you can
buy.
genuinely, some people genuinely improve a lot just by upgrading their mouse pad to a larger one. But besides that, everything else is just cherries on top. And if you don't have the skill to back it up, you're not going to be able to get any value out of a 240 hertz monitor. Like you need to get good first, and then you can take advantage of those monitors. But it's like buying a 240 hertz monitor when your GPU can render 50 frames, right? First you fix the GPU, which in this case is your skill, and then you can upgrade your tools, because then you can actually take advantage of the benefits.
There you go. And I did wanted to mention that out since we do get a lot of questions about gear and settings and the appropriate sensitivity. A lot of that stuff comes down to personal preference. Obviously, like Stuck said, there are some baselines that you should follow that will definitely, if you stay within that range, you should do fine. But that shouldn't be your main focus. Definitely focus on everything else we talked about before you start focusing on gear as the source of your improvement.
All right. And just real quick before we get into our announcements, Sucks, do you want to talk about like dates, times for your event that's coming up and where people can find it just real quick with the Elo Hell
So
event?
Elo Dante is going to broadcast their public tryouts on October 5th and 6th. They're going to be from 6 p.m. Eastern to 10 p.m. Eastern on both days. They're going to be broadcasted on the official ELOL Esports Twitch channel, so you can just search. You can either go to the website or the Discord or the Twitter page, and you're going to find the links to the Twitch page there. And it's going to be hosted by Jane. You're going to have Hurix and Lemon Kiwi as casters, and you're going to see a mix of some, well-known tier 3 players and some hopefully hidden gems that we're going to be able to see. But yes, it's going to be very exciting because we're also going to do a lot of kind of behind the scenes stuff where we really talk about how tryouts actually work and what we look at in the players that, to my knowledge, no one in the esports scene really has done. So it's going to be exciting.
Right on. If you guys want to support that, please go check it out. And we've also provided links to IoStux's Twitch, YouTube, and Twitter feed. If you were curious as to where you could find him, in the description of the podcast feed. And if you're here live, then you can also just find him in the chat. He's there, and you can just click his name and find all of the links there. We would like to extend a special thanks out to our diamond sponsors at patreon.com/Omnic Lab. You guys are amazing, and helping us at the highest level of support is no small feat. We have big thanks going out to Refire, Shazir, Shepard, Crimson Fail, Christoplaya, and Darren W., alongside of 4 new members to the regular team. 3 people at the plat level. We've got Lamburglar 1975 actually returning. Good to have you back, good friend. He hasn't left the Discord, but good to have him back on the Patreon. We also have got Harry K and Taylor E. And also back to the normal team, we've got Sparkle, which I wasn't sure if I shouted out the previous week, but I wanted to make sure that you felt thanked. In addition to that, if you guys want to support the show without your money, the best way to do that, besides listening and sharing the show and hanging out in the Discord, is going over to iTunes and leaving us a review. We've got one from Jailwood of USA from September 28th saying, well-balanced, knowledgeable, and entertaining. I recently discovered the podcast when I came back to Overwatch and had found it the most helpful and entertaining show on the subject. The hosts provide useful information that has helped my gameplay immensely. I've been binging it for the past week. Definitely worth a listen. Thank you so much for listening to the show, and we're giving you another resource this week, so you can go on YouTube if you got time and you want to just queue up a YouTube feed on your phone or at work, and you can hide your tabs. That's a good way to do it. Incognito is your friend. I think that's going to do it for basically the rest of the show. If you want to find Andres, where can people find you?
If you don't find me, you can do so over on Twitter at iPlayGames. You spell that IPLAI Games.
IoStux, you want to just give them your Twitter real quick?
IoStux.
You got it. IOSTUX. You can also find me with the tag NotRob on Twitter and Instagram. And if you need or want to find anything, you can always ping us in our Discord. If I'm awake, I'll respond. But, living on the other end of the globe for a lot of you is pretty difficult for my time zone. So I'll see you guys next week with episode 169. We have no confirmation of guests, but we do have a couple things in the works. And we've got a new meta coming. So we definitely want to talk about that coming up too.
Absolutely.
We'll see you guys then. And IoStux, thanks again for joining us on episode 168.
My pleasure.
Talking all about coaching. We'll probably have to have you come back and talk about something else.
Sounds like
guys.
a plan.
I have nothing more to teach.